Welcome to Story Time with Chris James. I will start out right where I left off last time. The Grays floated Pam out of her closet and straight into the back of her dresser. She saw stars and would have yelled, but her mouth wasn't cooperating. They dropped her onto her bed and turned to leave. Pam jumped from her bed and tackled the Gray with the wand. It tried to escape, but she had a firm grip on his tiny body. All of its companions made a hasty run for the closet door. Listen, you! She had to blink a few times to clear her vision. I'm getting sick and tired of you showing up every few minutes and abducting me. The Gray tried to get loose. Its companions all watched from behind the dresser. Look, if you want to talk to me, just ask. She looked into the black almond-shaped eyes. The eyes just stared back. What, you can't talk? She tried to look a little less intimidating. The Gray in her grasp held out its hand, the one with the wand. As Pam looked, it suddenly swung the arm and let go. The energy device sailed across the room and landed in the closet. Pam looked up as the other Grays all ducked back into the back. The Gray in her arms suddenly went limp. She looked down as it began to deflate. The Gray body looked as if it were a balloon that all the air had escaped from. It was nothing but a gray skin laying on the floor. She jumped back. Oh, man, I killed it! Pam felt horrible. As she watched, the gray skin shriveled up and vanished. There was just a small pile of what looked like ash laying on the floor. Well, that didn't go as planned. Before trying to get to sleep, Pam slipped downstairs to the garage. She scrounged around her dad's workbench until finding what she needed. Sneaking back up to her room. Yes, we know it's not really her room. It's the guest room. Pam got busy. She used her dad's cordless screwdriver and two handfuls of 2.5-inch screws. The closet door was firmly screwed shut. Chapter 5 Wednesday. You ever wonder why it's called Wednesday? It was named after the Norse god Odin. Odin? Yeah, him. The Germans called him Woden. Woden's Day eventually became Wednesday. That's why it's spelled so weird. Now you may wonder why the days of the week are named after Norse gods. Well, I do too. Pam stumbled into her homeroom just as the bell went off. Everyone was in their seats, looking as dignified as a bunch of 12th graders could. Mrs. Grampus gave Pam a look that spoke many words, but all were lost on her due to a lack of sleep. Pam slumped into her seat and promptly lost consciousness. A poke to the arm brought Pam out of her slumber. Jackie was surreptitiously pointing to the front of the classroom. Pam managed to get one eye open enough to see a man in a mechanic's uniform standing at the front next to Mrs. Grampus. Mrs. Grampus did the honors. Class, this is Mr. Grandier. He is here to talk to y'all about a possible class for next year. Mr. Grandier? The guy looked around as if he wished he were someplace else. Yes, good afternoon. No, morning. Yes, morning. Sweat broke out on his forehead. I was thinking, that is, the school board was thinking it might be a good idea to have shop class back in school. He pulled a red rag from his back pocket and mopped his brow, and now he had a dark streak across his forehead. Mrs. Grampus jumped in to save him. As you are well aware, we brought back home ec, which, despite some of your best efforts, survived the year. She looked straight at Pam. Mr. Hammerhead did instigate shop class to the students from. She looked at Pam again. The students with the leather jackets, so they would have some place to hang out. Pam tried to sink under her desktop. This was when she noticed her shirt was not all that clean. She had gotten up with enough time to dress and get ready for class, only to find her closet door was screwed shut. The cordless drill was on its last charge, and so she had to grab the cleanest dirty uniform. Mr. Grandyear went on. Yes, we want to bring shop class back as a regular part of the school schedule. This will give you, that is, the ones not already familiar with engines, how vehicles work. He looked around smiling. By a show of hands, how many of y'all would like to sign up for auto class next year? Nobody moved. All the classmates just sat there as the two adults stared back at them. Pam suddenly felt World Leader Pam stick her mind in unbidden. All of us will be graduating this year. She quickly looked at Mrs. Grampus to be sure that she was among those about to leave school. Mrs. Grampus smiled and gave her a slight nod. So none of us will be here next year. Mr. Grandyear looked lost. Oh, he looked around the room for somebody to talk to. Maybe you should try the 11th graders, Pam said. Yes, that's a great idea. I'll do. Mr. Grandyear vanished out the door. Pam wanted to head home and straight to bed. The office was nowhere near her home. It was as if her pickup took her there in her semi-conscious state. Pam got out looking for the Civil War ghosts and then remembered they were all en route to Laredo to attend a battle memorial. The place was so empty without them. She walked up to the porch steps and opened the door. Hildy was just visible over the top of her desk. She was reading tanks as a home defense option. Is there anything that absolutely has to be handled by me? Pam slumped into one of the chairs used by waiting customers. Some guy came by wanting to join the team or something, Hildy said from behind her magazine. Oh, man. Pam hoped that was inside her head. What's his name? Where is he? And what does he look like? Short, round, bald-headed. He has a huge mustache. Hildy sounded from behind her magazine. Short like your sister? Pam knew that Hilda was the exact same height as Hildy, but they refused to admit it. No, short like Billy Barty. Billy Barty was an American actor. In adult life, he stood 3 foot 9 inches tall due to cartilage hair hyplasia dwarfism, and because of his short stature, he was often cast in movies opposite taller performers for comic relief. He specialized in outspoken, wisecracking characters. Pam considered who this might be. It sounded an awful lot like the aliens that had her sign that Cassavetes for Gold contract. Where is he now? Coffee shop. Hildy lowered the magazine just enough to eyeball Pam. You really should see about getting a new office. Oh, and these came in from some guy at PD. He said they sounded more like our thing because PD doesn't do paranormal. She handed over a couple of pages and then she went back to her magazine. Pam walked into the coffee shop, scanning the papers and looking for anybody shorter than Sarah. The papers were all missing persons reports. Several were folks that worked at the local cheese factory. Eddie slid the "I need coffee" cup across to her. He aimed one finger at the far back corner. Pam took the huge coffee cup in both hands and followed the digit. She walked past several bookshelves to the far back wall and turned right. There she saw Dorothy was busy reshelving books while being entertained by a rather short man in a track suit. Dorothy was doing all the listening while the short guy was doing all the talking. He would grab each book from the cart and then hand them to her. Pam had to assume he was talking, since his mustache covered most of his lower jaw. Do I have to tell you who Dorothy was or is? In the bag company, here we go again. Dorothy was also Mrs. Hatchet, Susie Quirts, Bonnie Fulbright, and Cindy. She was what you would call a split personality. Only a few of her other personalities were dangerous. This character was based on an actual person that I knew way back when. That person was interesting. Dorothy gave the guy a huge smile and then turned to Pam. Oh, I was just putting some things away. She didn't actually work at the office, but she spent most of her time there since having lost all of her other inhabitants. You wanted to see me? Pam addressed the short guy. He looked up at her as if ready for some short jokes. Only if you're the guy in charge around here. He turned his attention back to Dorothy for just a second. Pam tried to think how World Leader Pam would proceed. Are you in need of a psychic or a spiritualist? None of the above. I'm in need of a nice big place where I can teach my classes. He brushed an imaginary speck from his uniform sleeve. I'm what you might call a ghost exorcist. Pam almost laughed. You don't exorcise ghosts, you exorcise demons. Ghosts, you just ask them to leave, and they usually go someplace else. Oh no, I don't deal with demons. Those folks are all crazy. Have you ever had to deal with a demon? Pam thought about each of her many run ins in the past 9 months. I've met a few. See, I'm an exorcist. I teach exercise class for ghosts. He dropped to the floor and knocked out a few push ups. 1, 2, 3, 4. He switched from two hands to one hand, all the while still moving up and down. His mustache brushed against the floor as he moved. Pam noticed that he did have some rather impressive triceps and biceps. The guy sprang to his feet and held out one hand. Pequeño gigante, at your service. Pam shook hands as she wondered if it was a good idea to bring him in or not. Her sleep-addled brain was in no mood for thought. Okay, let me show you around. She noticed Dorothy was eyeballing the gym teacher with stars in her eyes. Dorothy, why don't you tag along? Dorothy shoved the last few books sideways onto a shelf and dusted her hands. I don't want to impose. Then she began to follow them. Pam led the pair towards the stairs going down. She asked, Can you see ghosts? Oh no, Mr. Gigante said. I only know they're around because I can feel their sweaty presence. Oh, well, okay. Pam turned to the stairs. And how much do you charge for your services? I haven't come up with a monetary payment as of yet. I hope to build my business and then see about some form of remuneration. Pam hoped this meant he was financially stable. They walked down the stairs and past the office building in the basement. The breezeway that passed through the offices, there was no breeze. They came to a huge cement slab. It was to become a second office building, but right now it was just open space. Mr. Gigante looked around as if he were in Wonderland. Wow, this would work out great. Could you maybe get the lights up just a bit? The place was very dark. Pam saw Belle peeking out from her office in the old coal bin. Ah, hope she doesn't mind the music. She looked at her current guest. We could build some changing rooms along this wall. She pointed to the area that she was referring, and maybe an office for you as well. You are truly a wonderful person. He grabbed her hand and kissed it. He also kissed Dorothy's hand, only he lingered a bit longer. Well, a lot longer. Pam led them back upstairs. Get with Hildy at the front desk and fill out the forms we need, and we'll see you around. I am at your disposal any day of the week. Well, except for Sundays and Tuesdays and maybe Wednesdays. Pam was thinking, what could possibly go wrong? As Pam was about to walk out the door, Hildy handed her a pile of post-it notes. All of these people want to talk to you right away. She went back to her magazine. There was a note from Maurice Lachat asking about his cheese problem. Pam wrote on the note, call tomorrow. Bill Palmerhausen had left a note saying he was confused trying to find cheese since there were so many kinds. In order to find something, he needed to see a picture of it first. Before having all of her personalities removed, Dorothy, in the guise of Susie Quirts, had organized Bill's office. She had placed hundreds of Rolodex card files on the shelves that covered 3 of the walls. Each one was filled with images of something that someone was going to ask him to find. One file was nothing but hundreds of TV remotes. Another was filled with car key photos. There were glasses in one file and marbles in another. All the little things that people lost every day and needed to find right away. I know somebody out there is going to ask why he doesn't just use a computer. Any kind of electronic equipment was destined to go completely haywire as soon as it crossed the threshold of the front door. This is why Jefferson had to teach her students in the garage barn storage building. When Bill tried looking for photos of cheese, he was overwhelmed by images coming from all over the world, mostly Italy, but none from this hemisphere. He said the really bizarre thing was, as he lay there on the floor of his office, the images seemed to diminish by only a few million. There was also a post-it from Detective Mark Slot. It asked if the bag had received many requests to find missing citizens. She wrote, call tomorrow on the note. Pam ran upstairs and asked Hortense Medusa to see if she could find anything about missing cheese using one of her snow globes. Hortense stared into her favorite snow globe, the one with a tiny King Kong swatting an airplane out of the sky. I see something. She got as close to the globe as she could. Her eyelashes brushed against the side. I see a lot of cheese on shelves, row upon row, but I can't figure out where it is. Hortense tried shaking the globe to get the glitter flying. I'll see what I can find. Pam thanked her giant friend and headed out the door. As she was walking to the stairs, she noticed the door to Mikey Baba Ganoush's office was open just a bit. She glanced in and saw what looked like a body hanging from the ceiling. Oh no, I don't need a murder right now, or ever. Pam considered running downstairs and asking Mr. Armstrong to have a look. Pam had a sudden image of T-shirt Pam saying, "What's the worst thing that can happen?" If you don't know who T-shirt Pam is, go back and read The Bag Company, Lost in Time. Pam took a deep breath and then she pushed the door open. Once the door was fully opened, she opened her eyes. Well, just one. There was Mikey hanging upside down from the ceiling. He had a rope tied around his ankles, which went up to a pulley that was hanging from a beam above. As Pam was about to run downstairs and call the police, Mikey opened his eyes. "Oh, hey, uh, could you, maybe untie this rope and get me down?" His face was bright red. Pam was surprised he was alive and glad that she didn't have to call Lieutenant Slot. "Yes, of course, I'll get you down." Pam walked over to where the rope was tied to a hook that was screwed into the wall. The rope was tied in a bow, so she grasped the tag end and pulled. As the rope sped away from her, she thought maybe she should have gotten some help lowering Mikey down a bit slower. Mikey crashed to the floor. His turban did help cushion his skull just a bit. Pam helped him sit up and checked his skull for any damage. "What happened? Were you accosted by evil beings or something?" Mikey looked a whole lot embarrassed. "I was trying an experiment. It was supposed to make me smarter. Increased blood flow to the brain." Pam looked from him to the pulley hanging from the ceiling. "Do you feel any smarter?" "Actually, yes. I now know better than to take advice from Prince Wapo." Pam was not going to ask. She absolutely did not want to know. "Prince Wapo told you to hang upside down in order to get smarter?" "Yeah, he sent word by way of Carol to tell me I should try it. I got Grandy and Carol to help me up and tied off, but then they both had to leave, so I was kind of stuck." Pam really didn't want to know. "How long have you been hanging upside down?" "What's today?" "Wednesday evening." Since last Friday." He rubbed his head. "I think I'll go get some coffee and a bottle of aspirin." Pam escorted Mikey back down the stairs. Seeing an abnormal behavior was the usual around the office, this would be considered a normal day. The next note was from Dr. Nasher wanting to know what they, the bag company, were doing to alleviate his problems. Pam made a note on the note to call him soon, like maybe tomorrow. There was a note from Cassie Cassavetes asking if they, the bag company, had found her husband yet. Pam really didn't want to talk to her any time this week. The last phone call had cost her several nights of sleep. One post caught her attention because the handwriting was so bad she had to really look at it to try deciphering what was written on it. Not anything like Hildy's handwriting. She held the note out at arm's length. This did nothing, so she brought it in close to the end of her nose. The words looked like some doctor had written out a prescription for some dangerous drug. There was a 3A followed by more incomprehensive scribbling. She wondered what was going on in the room on the third floor. Hildy, is anybody using 3A right now? Hildy looked over her shoulder. Nope, empty, and then back to her magazine. The staff at the bag did tend to move around a lot. Mr. Armstrong was on his 8th office. He left a trail of destroyed rooms and furniture behind him. His new office was built using flame retardant paneling, and the studs were all steel. Not aluminum, steel. Madam Dingus had asked to be moved to the old coal room in the basement after her encounter with that giant man-eating, well, person-eating onion. Pam had insisted on moving her to the second floor. They compromised by having Angela use a room on the third floor. It was her form of penance for all the bad things she had done over the years. Pam headed up to see what was going on and who was doing the going. Room 3A was at the far end of the hall. Pam pulled the office key ring from her pocket. A key ring only applies since the one and only key was in fact on a ring. All the locks in the building used the same key. This was discovered one day while looking for the key to Hans Hansenson's room, which just happened to have been 3A. The door to 3A looked like all the other doors on the third floor, except somebody had installed a peephole during one particularly scary investigation. Pam was undecided whether she should knock or just walk in. Opening any door in the building could lead to you seeing things that you might not want to see. Pam knocked on the door. A voice from inside yelled, "Come in," followed by the sound of furniture being moved around. Pam opened the door and was shocked by what she saw. A short man in a three-piece suit was standing in the middle of the room while two big burly men in overalls moved a huge desk from one side of the room to the other. This is not what shocked Pam. What shocked her was how big this one office was. Not big like the basement, but about 3 times as big as any other office on the third floor. Pam did some quick calculations in her head and realized that the room must stick out into the backyard several dozen feet. There was nothing sticking out the back of the building except that slide that Mikey Baba Ganoush had tried to install, so he didn't have to walk down the stairs from the third floor. The slide had lasted all of one try, which had led to Mikey having to visit the hospital. Parts of the frame were still sticking out of the siding. The men finished their labors, and the one in the suit turned to Pam. "I hope you don't mind my starting out before consulting with you." He indicated the desk that was now positioned about 8 feet from the side of the building, somewhere over the backyard. The layout was causing me intense displeasure. He looked from Pam to the desk and back. My name is Dieter Shrinkwell, doctor of psychiatry and psychology." He extended his hand in greeting. Pam went to shake the extended appendage, only to find her hand passing through his. "Oh, excuse me." He pulled a white glove from his pocket and put it on. He extended his hand once more. Having shaken hands with the dead on several occasions, well, actually having her hand pass through the dead, Pam was hesitant to try again. The gloved hand was still there in a friendly manner. She placed her hand in his and was surprised as she could feel it. "Oh, wow, how did you do that?" "A nearly dead fabric. I got tired of not being able to make contact with the living, so I had these made." He looked at his hand and flexed his fingers. The hardest part was getting the style right. His suit looked like it cost more than Pam's entire wardrobe. "I think you sent me a note?" Pam wasn't sure what to expect from this well-heeled ghost. I am in need of a place to conduct my sessions, some place where I won't have to deal with the living, brandishing smoking bundles of weeds or holding out recording devices and asking if there's anyone here who wishes to speak. He rolled his eyes. Oh, you're looking for some place to work. Pam thought about this for a second. Um, who are your clients? Those recently passed who are finding it difficult to cope with no longer being among the living. Those long passed away who still haven't come to terms with their situation. He brushed some imaginary dust from one sleeve. You'd be amazed at how many poor souls go through death without a clue on how to handle things. I wish to do something about it. He stood to his full height, about 5'6". Not very tall, but he was still well over Pam's head. A pipe suddenly appeared in his mouth. Anyone ever tell you that you look like J. Allen Hynek? Yes, all the time. Pam was wondering how she was going to get Hildy to handle his appointments. Uh, there's no problem with you working out of our office, but how will your clients or your patients schedule their visits? Ah, my secretary will be handling that. She will also be in need of an office. Reaching into his inside pocket, Dr. Shrinkwell extended a handful of cash. This should cover the rent for the next several months. Pam took the bills, fully expecting them to fall to the floor. Nearly dead money? Pam began wondering how she was going to deposit this in the bank. No, that's the real deal. I find most people prefer it. Um, Secretary. I guess I could use the office next door. Pam tried to think who was currently using 3B. Several of the rooms had been connected with doors. This was one of them. The doctor handed her another handful of money. This should cover any inconveniences for the person next door. Pam went over what few rules they had and then welcomed the doctor to their bizarre and sometimes unhappy family. Several of the staff didn't always see eye to eye. Hildy and Hortense were constantly sniping at each other. Finishing up, Pam stepped next door to see who was currently using 3B. She knocked and entered when she heard Gertrude Katzbach's voice. The cat therapist was in the middle of packing. Is something wrong? Pam hoped she wasn't leaving. Having a place where folks could lay on the floor and be attended to by bunches of cats was not something you found everywhere. Gertrude was exceptionally popular. No, not really. I'm just really uncomfortable in this room all of a sudden. My cats are all just sitting there staring at the wall. Sure enough, there were about 8 or 9 cats, all staring towards the room 3A. Do you think I might maybe could move across the hallway or something? Maybe someplace with a view. I'll see if maybe 3E is available. Pam went across the hall to see if room 3E was being used. She then went back across the hall to help Gertrude move her things. Everything she had was related to cats. Cat toys, cat boxes, cat munchies, little cat beds. The cats did their best to get underfoot and in the way as much as possible. Once the cat therapist was in her new office, Pam went to tell the doctor that room 3B was now available for his secretary. She hoped the woman wasn't allergic to all the cat hair that was in every corner of the room. One last visit to Hildy to see about any new messages. There were quite a few. Pam shoved the handful of notes into her backpack. I'll deal with this later. She stumbled out the door. That night, she thought she heard somebody knocking at the closet door. Pam just rolled over and went back to sleep. Chapter 6. Thursday. Thursday is named after Thor, the god of thunder. It was originally called Thor's Day. Once again, what's with all the Norse gods that we have the days named after? Pam woke feeling better than she thought possible. She looked at her cell phone and saw that she had a whole hour and a half to get ready before she had to head to school. She brushed everything needing brushing and checked her backpack to see if there was any homework due. As Pam was about to get her uniform from the closet, she remembered screwing the door shut. Her dad's cordless drill was still sitting on the dresser where she had set it last. It was still discharged and in need of being plugged in. She looked at her uniform from yesterday, which was also her uniform from Tuesday. There were several coffee stains on the front. One sleeve was what looked like maybe blood. It turned out to be ketchup. The collar had peanut butter on one side and syrup on the other. Pam looked at the clock. If I leave right now, I might be able to grab a new shirt at the store and still make it to class on time. At least the skirt, the tartan, didn't show too many stains. Pam ran down the stairs. Paula was surprised to see her youngest as well as oldest up and heading out the door. "You're not going to the office, are you?" She thought this was the only reason Pam would ever get up on time. "I need a clean shirt, so I thought I'd run by the store and—" Pam saw the look on her mother's face. "You have several clean shirts in your closet. Or did you burn them up in home ec again?" Paula hoped Pam would survive her last year of school without destroying either the building or her wardrobe, or especially herself. Pam stood there with a deer in the headlights look. Paula looked at Pam. "Is there something wrong with your uniforms?" Followed by, "Is there something in your closet? Like maybe a monster?" "Aliens," Pam mumbled. "There are, or rather were, aliens in my closet. Last night, and the night before, and the night before that, too." Pam felt like she was regressing a few years. Paula was shocked that she could listen to Pam and not think she had gone crazy. Not like her sister Ramona, who was getting close to being released from the state hospital. And are these aliens still in your closet?" "No, I think they only come at night." Pam told her mom the whole story of Mrs. Cassavetes and the many alien abductions. Paula looked Pam right in the eye. After looking long and hard, she decided that Pam was not slipping off of her head. "Go get a new shirt or two and then go to school. I'll get Al to do something about your closet." Pam was relieved to think that something was being done to help her with the Grays' late night visits. She gave her mom a quick hug and ran out the door. Merkel's store was more than just groceries. They sold all kinds of things like school uniforms, and Pam pulled into the parking lot. The lot was full, so she had to drive around a bit before finding a spot. She parked right next to the street and had to run half a block before she was inside. She expected the store to be crowded, but it looked as if nobody was there. Nobody except the woman running the cash register and some old guy putting cans on the shelves. Pam grabbed two white shirts and then sprinted to the checker outer lane. Her curiosity gland got the better of her. "Why is the parking lot so full?" The checker outer woman never even looked up. "Dunno. The boss isn't worried, so neither am I. Pam wanted to ask more questions, but her cell phone said she had better get going or she was going to be late. Pam was driving her pickup while she put the new shirt on over the old one. At a red light, she got the shirt on and buttoned up. She had to stop fiddling with her uniform while she drove, but she was able to get all the buttons in the right holes eventually. As she pulled to the curb across from the school, Pam checked her time. She had a few minutes left, so she lifted her new shirt enough to get the old one unbuttoned. She then pulled one arm from the sleeve and pulled the old ratty shirt out the opposite sleeve. What a trick! She jumped out of her truck and had a quick look in the side mirror. Her new shirt was on the right way around, and all the buttons were in the right holes. She grabbed her backpack and headed to class. Things were finally looking up. Pam walked out the door of the school and across to her pickup. Her uniform was still intact, and nobody was en route to the hospital. As she was getting into her truck, Pam thought at long last life was working out in the right direction for her. While she was driving across town to the office, a thought came to her. Thoughts were not a new thing to Pam. Intelligent thoughts were something she'd been experiencing ever since her time in the Mall of Doom. Somehow, having contact with world leader Pam had caused Pam to change. Come to think of it, Pam found her cooking abilities had improved only after having spent time with Chick-fil-A Pam. This was the only way Pam could keep hundreds of alternative selves she had run into on track. There had been Ratty Jeans Pam and a T-shirt Pam, as well as Barista Pam, and not to forget Geek Meek Pam. The last time Pam had made coffee at the office, it had actually been drinkable. Something about having met all the other possible hers had affected Pam in a positive way. Once she was at the office, Pam hurried into the reception room. Hildy was scrunched way down at her desk. Just the top of her head was visible. The magazine she was reading, Black Powder Machine Guns. Pam didn't know there was such a thing. Without looking up, Hildy handed over a stack of messages. These are for you. Some were marked urgent. This meant the word on the paper were all underlined. Pam took the offered messages and headed upstairs. Maurice Lachette wants to know where his cheese is. Pam looked at the next message. Cassie Cassavetes wants to know where her husband is. She flipped the next message. There were a few from the International House of Cheese asking about missing cheese makers. People, not machines. Okay, I can do this. Dr. Nashers wanted to know when his office will be his again. This was Pam's grand idea for the day. At the bottom of the stack of post-it notes was a card. It had a picture of the stockyards in downtown Fort Worth. Pam flipped it over to see what was written on the back. It said, Hope you don't miss us too much. We got out of your pickup at the gas station and you drove off and left us. We found somebody else to hang out with. The card was signed The Voices in Your Head. Pam had been wondering what had happened to them. At the top of the stairs, Pam glanced in on Mikey Baba Ganoush to be sure he wasn't hanging upside down or maybe suspended from the ceiling fan. He was sitting in the lotus position. At first, Pam thought he was meditating. Then she noticed his turban was pulled down over his eyes. This meant he was asleep. Odd way to sleep, but then everything he did was odd, so this would be normal. She walked over to Dr. Dieter Shrinkwell's office, but found the door was locked. The door to 3B was open, so she stuck her head around the corner. A prime young lady sat at the desk facing the door. She had one of those old-fashioned hairdos that made her look a lot taller than she was. Her dress was also old-fashioned, as were her shoes. "You must be Dr. Shrinkwell's secretary. I'm Pam. I kind of run the place, sort of. Good morning or evening, depending on when you are here. My name is Charlemagne Balderdash. Would you like an appointment to see the good doctor?" Pam looked hard at the woman. She might have been 20, or she could have been in her late 40s. "You're not dead, right?" "Heavens, no, not yet. Soon, maybe, or not." The woman smiled. Pam glanced around the room. It matched the furniture in the building to a T. The typewriter on her desk was something from the 1920s. The lamp looked like either an antique or a very expensive fixture. The desk and chair could have been a match for Hildy's domain, except they looked brand new. A row of wooden filing cabinets ran along behind her. The chairs for folks to wait in looked far more comfortable than what passed for the waiting room downstairs. Welcome to the bag company. Let Hildy know if you need anything." Pam walked to the other end of the floor. Pam stopped at Hortense's office door and knocked. She stuck her head in and asked, "Any luck finding the cheese?" Hortense was dressed for the occasion. An all black knee-length dress with a red lace neckpiece. Her boots were tall and black as well. "I can see a ton of cheese, but I don't know where it is." Hortense held up the snow globe and shook it. Pam watched as the snow swirled around Godzilla's head and began to fall on Tokyo below. Hortense got to her feet. Her boots had high heels, so when she stood, she towered over Pam. The walls of her office were covered with shelves, and the shelves were covered with tools of her trade, snow globes. "Let me try Old Faithful." She reached up to the top shelf. Pam could see what looked like a flat plane seen at the bottom of the globe. There was what looked like a hole in the middle of the tableau. "What kind of scene is that?" she asked. "It's Old Faithful, the geyser." Hortense pointed to the label at the base. It said, "Old Faithful, Yellowstone National Park," in black letters. She sat down at her desk and placed the globe in the center of her desk and began to gaze into it. Hortense got her head right down by the snow globe. Her chin was on the desk. She rotated her head until her right cheek was on the wooden surface. "As far as I can see, the cheese is in a store?" Hortense rubbed her eyes. "I see tons of cheese all in a store somewhere close to us, but I don't see where." Pam wanted to stay and visit with her giant friend, but duty called. "I have to go talk to Sharma. Let me know if you get anything." She made her way to the other end of the hallway. Pam opened the unmarked door and walked to the ladder going up to the attic. She stood at the top of the step and knocked on the door. The door swung open to reveal a pair of cowboy boots. Sharma looked down at her from the attic. "Pam, glad you could drop by." She ushered the teenager into the attic living room. "What exciting mission do you need help with today?" Sharma had grown bored with hanging out in the attic, so she had set her sights on becoming a ghost investigator. Not as in looking for ghosts, but as in being a ghost that investigated. She already had a trench coat and a Humphrey Bogart hat, but she seldom wore them since it was just too hot. "I need you to go to the dentist's office with me." Sharma quickly put her hand over her mouth and backed away. Um, er, I hate the dentist. Maybe some other time." No, no, it's a haunted dentist's office, and we need to unhaunt it. Pam needed some expert advice, and Sharma was the only ghost still at the office. Pam got busy laying out her plan. Pam pulled into the nearly vacant parking lot and parked. They got out and walked to the front door. The door was unlocked as if waiting for patients who were avoiding the place at all costs. Bubbles was at her post. Miss Bubbles, I'm here to see what can be done about the hauntings. Bubbles was sitting at her desk. She had a large cross and a Mogan David hanging from around her neck. Several white candles were lit on the corners of her desk. Incense filled the air. She looked at Pam. Okay, but I'm out of here before sundown. No ifs, ands, or buts. She looked at her watch. You have 1 hour and 15 minutes. The office was quiet. The doctor was out playing golf or pool or whatever he did when no drilling of teeth, which, with his office being haunted, was never. Pam led Sharma to the last office on the left. The first time I was here, I ran into a ghost in here. She indicated the door. Then, when we came by later that night, a bunch of ghosts all ran in here and vanished into the floor. I need you to have a look and see where they went. The plan had sounded much better inside her head. Great, let's get to it. Sharma grabbed a knob and opened the door. She was able to pass through things, but preferred the old-fashioned way of doing things. The room hadn't changed since the last visit. The dental chair was still there, along with all the torture devices used on the patients. The ghosts all disappeared into that corner, Pam pointed. Sharma walked to the corner. She looked at the carpet. It looked new and normal. She got down on her knees and had a closer look. Closing her eyes, Sharma placed her hand on the floor. It sank down past her elbow. There's an opening here. She felt around under the floor. There are stairs going down. Where do they go? Pam was hoping for a quick conclusion to this case, as she had too much on her plate already. Sharma looked at the floor and then at Pam. I'll be right back. If I'm not here in 10 minutes, never mind, I'll be back. She stood up and moved to the middle of the floor. Closing her eyes, Sharma began walking towards the corner. As she went, she began to move down into the floor. Pam hoped she hadn't sent her friend into any kind of trouble. Once Sharma's head had cleared the floor, she opened her eyes. She found it was easier to pass through things as long as she didn't see it happening. The stairs went down into a basement. As the last step, she looked around to see where she was. There was a hall going in both directions. There were doors on both sides. They looked more like cells than rooms. The sound of talking came from the first door. Sharma stepped up to the door. It was solid with a massive bolt in the center. There was a small door at about eye level. She pulled the small door open and looked in. There was a man sitting on the floor in the corner. He had on a straitjacket. He was carrying on a conversation with himself. When he finished talking, his voice changed as he answered. Well, this is another fine mess you've gotten us into, followed by, It wasn't my fault. It wasn't all my fault. After all, you said it was a good idea. The guy looked at Sharma. Hello, Clarisse. He sounded like Hannibal Lecter. Sharma quickly slammed the door shut and locked it. Pam looked at her watch. It was exactly 10 seconds from the last time she'd checked. Sharma had been gone for 8.5 minutes. She wished she had gone with her ghost friend, but then again, this was why she had brought Sharma in the first place. She checked her watch again. Pam placed her face right down near the floor and whispered, "Sharma, can you hear me? Are you okay?" She placed her ear on the floor and listened. There was no response. When her watch showed it was 10.5 minutes, Pam decided it was time to do something. But what? She moved to the wall where Sharma had started. Pam closed her eyes and walked forward, trying to feel any stairs as she went. She took little tiny steps and held her arms out for balance. She moved slowly so that when her nose hit the wall, it didn't hurt too bad. Ow! She opened her eyes. Well, so much for using ghost stairs. Sharma's head was on the floor behind her. Pam nearly screamed. "You should see this place. It's way cool." Sharma came up from the floor. "There used to be an old insane asylum here. They tore the building down years ago, but they just left the basement in place. Just sealed it off and poured concrete over the stairway. Some of the patients are still here." Sharma brushed the dust and spiderwebs from her arms. Pam sat down on the doctor's stool so Sharma could use the dental chair. "So, how do we get these ghosts to move on?" Sharma tried to relax in the chair. "I don't know. These guys are still all crazy." Pam got to thinking about this. Wait a second. If somebody dies from a disease, they don't come back as a diseased ghost. Shouldn't crazy people be normal once they're ghosts? Pam tried to channel world leader Pam. What would she do in a position like this? She'd just stand up and tell the ghosts to go someplace else. But where? I got it. Pam looked around the room. "I need the doctor's coat." Pam ran out the door and back up the hall to Dr. Nasher's office. Pam was back before Sharma was out of the chair. "Here, put this on." Pam handed Sharma Dr. Nasher's lab coat. Sharma took the white coat and put it on. "Okay, now you go back down and tell all the ghosts that they have to leave. Act like you're the head doctor in charge of the asylum. We'll have this place cleared out quicker than ever." Sharma snapped her fingers. "Hey, let's take them to Waldo's superstore. The folks that hang out there, nobody will notice a bunch of insane ghosts." Pam thought about this idea. "There's a slight problem. The nearest Waldo's is in the next county over." "Even better. They'll be far away." Sharma turned towards the stairs. Pam wanted to stop her, but she couldn't come up with a better plan. Dr. Nashers needed his building cleared so he could get on with fixing people's teeth. The people that hung out at Waldo's would never notice a bunch of crazy ghosts. The crazy ghosts had to be put somewhere. As Pam was weighing her options, Sharma came walking back up from the basement. The ghosts were all following. The guy in white was leading the guy in the straitjacket on what looked like a leash. The woman with the tinfoil crown was acting as if she were in some kind of a royal parade. The ghosts were all following Sharma, but a few looked as if they really didn't want to go. Sharma did her best to act like a doctor. "Come along, the asylum is closed, so we need to move you patients to a new location." Pam looked at the 13 ghosts. They all looked back at her, some with fear, while others looked at her as if she might be one of them. "Right, is this everyone?" Pam directed this at the guy in the dirty white coat. "Yeah, that's the lot," the guy in white said. "Okay, let's get into my truck." Pam had a shudder, thinking about what she was about to do. She led the ghosts out to the parking lot. The woman that thought she was the queen was placed in the back seat. The guy in the straitjacket, along with his keeper, got the other side of in got the other seat in the back. All the rest were put in the bed of the pickup. One of the ghosts, a guy in a dressing gown, stood up looking over the roof of the cab. Others sat on the sides. Pam was about to tell them that they should sit on the floor, but then she thought, well, if they did fall out, they sure couldn't get hurt. Or could they? Pam got in behind the wheel, and Sharma still had on the lab coat. Shouldn't you leave that for the doctor? Pam asked. Not yet. The doctor still needs to take care of her patients. Sharma said this with authority. They both quickly looked into the back to see if any of those back there understood what these were saying. They all just looked as if they were going on a field trip. Pam drove out of the driveway and onto the street. And that's where I'm going to take a break. It's been an hour. Hopefully, it won't be too long before I continue this exciting episode of UFOs Attack the Bag Company. Till next time, this is Chris James for Story Time.